are. And so I really wanted to get his thoughts about it. So Ahmad, if you don't mind, we are all ears.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Angie, and thank you everybody for your time. You all can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Morning.
So, yeah, Angie and I spoke a week or two ago, and we talked a little bit to share, some of my thoughts on sync sessions. I do have to say, though, I don't I don't have anything solid to say that my sync sessions produce better or produce high quality educational outcomes, right? What I do know is that students tend to like them. Does that mean that they're learning more? Does that mean that they're retaining the information more? I don't know that for sure, right? So I think that's an important disclaimer. So before I start, I thought what I'd do today is simply give you a description of how I run my sync sessions and maybe show you a few things. The setup that I use in terms of technology, I use my iPad, and what I do is I mirror my iPad to my computer. I started using this program called Air Server. It's available for both PC and Mac. And you can mirror your iPad just like you're mirroring it to a TV. And I would then share that screen onto Neuro. So I don't upload slides to Neuro. I think when you do that, it limits you. I don't use the whiteboard on Neuro either because it's also not very good. So I put my slides on my iPad, and then with my Apple Pencil or whatever stylus I guess would work absolutely fine, I then navigate the screen. So I started doing 2 synchronous sessions a week. And when I started doing sync sessions, I thought that I really should not be reteaching what students have already been taught during async lectures. And I think when that happens, that's a complaint that I've heard before from some students, and they don't enjoy that if you're just going over what has already been recorded. And if you think about it, we kind of want to record asyncs between 8 to 15 minutes, right? And then you come in a synchronous session and you give them 1 hour of lecture. That is not going to fly by well with the students. And I think that makes sense. And so a kind of a rule that I have is that if what I want to go over in the sync session, if it can be recorded on a video, then don't present it in a sync session. If you can record it as an async, then that's how it should go. So I started teaching physiology, and physiology is also very different than a lot of clinical sciences. It's very heavy on the science. It's very heavy on knowing mechanisms and just stuff that you just got to know. And so I have 2 different types of sync sessions, and I'll show you both if I can share my screen. So
hang on, Ahmad. Let me make sure that, yes, you can go ahead and share.
Okay. Here it is. All right, so can you all see my screen?
Yep.
So I'm using this application that I've started using this very recently. It's called GoodNotes 5, and I think some of you may be aware of it. It's what students use. Students use either Notability or GoodNotes. Those are the most 2 common applications for notes. What I really like about GoodNotes is that it gives you a presentation feature. I don't know if that's available in Notability. So here you can see my full screen. I disabled the presentation feature, and you can see everything that I do. There's another set. If you go up here, you can choose. There are 3 levels of presentations, and I'll show you maybe this one. So now you can't see the toolbar, and whatever I'm doing in terms of tools and stuff like that, the students can't see. Let me just stretch this out a little bit. So I go into these review sessions, and I have 0 slides. I only have a title slide, and I go in, and the next page is a blank page just like this. And what I do is that I survey students, or not really survey, but I tell students, hey, if anything is bothering you or anything that you want me to review, please write it on the discussion board. Please let me know. Sometimes students do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they tell me things, but it's not, just a couple of things I can go over in 5 minutes. I think about the week's material, and I think about I try to prioritize what's the most important thing in the week. And what I tend to do is I try to synthesize everything. I try to break down the concepts and rebuild it in front of the students. I simplify the material. And here's an example of something I did on Tuesday. So I came in and I wanted to go over heart sounds. And what I did, right, no slides, and I would just start using my handwriting, and as if this is a blackboard and I'm in the classroom, and I am just writing things out and trying to describe to students what they should be listening to and how that works. Here's a page, I go on to another one. I don't have the best art in the world, but I try. I watch lots of YouTube videos to kind of find out the best way to explain a topic. I don't just make these up. I do sit down on my own, try to write some notes before my sessions and on how I want to present specific topics. But when I go in there, I don't just write this and then present it. I write it with the students. I start from a blank page and we start writing this together. And I think by breaking concepts down and rebuilding it in front of students, I find that to help them a lot. And I would just go on like this and keep on making slides up as we go, and just explaining different concepts. So these are review sessions, right? Again, the whole process here is I can't do this on an async lecture, right? I want students to be talking with me as I go, because we are deconstructing the material and building it from scratch, one step at a time. And I want students to see that process happen too. And that's why, like, if you look over here, I go, squatting is going to do this, Venus return, then that is going to do this, and that leads to this. And then finally, when you have this, that's going to lead to that, so on like that. I can't do that on an async lecture. Therefore, I do it on my sync sessions. I don't have students answering questions in these type of sessions. I just go about, I do ask them to give me, to talk with me as I go, usually and mostly on the chat bar. So that is one type of session. Another type of review sessions or sync sessions that I lead, and these have been the majority of the sync sessions that I have done. I like to, they've learned the content during async. When I come into sync sessions, again, stemming from the concept that I do not want to reteach the material, but I want to put it in application. So I start doing cases. And what I like doing is, I don't like to do a large case, that one case that spans the whole sync session. I like to do multiple small cases. And I like to quiz the students and poll them using multiple choice questions. So this was a sync session that I had yesterday. So did some housekeeping, I go into a case. So a case looks like this, and then a question. These questions, I use the polling feature in Nero. So I go in half an hour before my sync session, and I start copying and pasting these questions in Nero, and I put them on the playlist, and I just start going over them. So the students, this risk calculator, it wasn't introduced to them in the asyncs, right? So I wanted to introduce them to this risk calculator that they can use, but without having to do it in a lecture kind of format. So I do it in a quiz format, right? And so they do the question, and from the question they learn, because this is still a learning process for them. So I still use this I use this to introduce new material, but in the form of a question. So after one question, we do another, and then we do another. And what I do is I have to, after every question, explain to them why the correct answer is the correct answer and why the other ones are incorrect. And it has to make sense. I have to go through all the distractors. A was correct because, B is incorrect because, same for C, same for D. And sometimes I have to write a few things and draw a few things to kind of show them what I mean. I have lots of these. So yesterday I had a total of 9 polling questions, just one after the other of questions that I would just poll students, and we would just talk and break them down. And then some students would say, hey, I don't understand this, or I don't get this. And it happens to me a lot to say, oh, this makes so much more sense now. And also sometimes what I would do, like I just mentioned, is I would use a quiz question to introduce new material. And so I would then, I won't give these to, I give the students the questions, but then here, for example, I introduced them to a study that was recently published in a very high impact journal, based on a quiz question: why do statins cause muscle pain? Or that was a question. And then I introduced them to something of some mechanisms behind why we think statins cause muscle pain, and a cool study about how exercise can kind of prevent that. And they would have that. Then I went into here's a different type of case. So this is a second case study that I had for them yesterday. And I didn't have quiz questions associated with this. I didn't break them into groups, although that's a great thing to do, and I think they like that. But I had a case. We went over a physical exam. So I had an assignment for them, and that assignment included heart auscultations. And I didn't like how they did. They really did not do so well. It didn't appear to me that they understood why they were doing heart auscultations in the assignment. So part of any physical exam is to go over cardiovascular screening and doing a heart auscultation. So I kind of really honed in on what a cardiovascular auscultation, why do we do that? And I started up another new blank slide, and I started breaking it down for them. We auscultate because we want to do this, we want to do that. And I started breaking down the steps. And so now they know when you're auscultating, you need to report on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, rather than just saying to me, hey, their heart sounds are normal, and you go on. So I identified a point of weakness, and I addressed that by just kind of hiding it somewhere in a case study and just building on that case. I show them an ECG strip, and we start breaking it down. I start highlighting the things that I think that should point out to them, and so on. So again, if you look at what I'm doing here, it really just becomes clear that I try really hard not to lecture in my sync sessions. Do not lecture. I find that to be a big problem. And I think students do that as well. I try to apply the content in some form or another, or try to maybe just go over it in a very different way to the students. But I try to give them something that as an async lecture cannot give them. And having this set up helps me with that. Having the ability to have a whiteboard or a blackboard and kind of scribble and draw and highlight and annotate really, really makes a big difference for me. And so, yeah, that's basically all that I have. And I thought I would just go over and show you some examples of what I do. And if you guys have any questions, if Carrie, you would want to add anything, yeah.
I have a question of what the program's called again, Ahmad, right, that you're using, because you're writing live with us right now, correct?
Yes. And so this one is really cool. It's called Good Notes.
Good note. Okay. And
5.
what's the reflective piece you were talking about? Is Good Notes, that's a part of it, the iPad?
So no, so Good Notes 5, this is an $8 application. You get it off of the App Store, right? Now, Zoom has a really cool feature. Zoom, you can mirror your iPad onto Zoom without any third-party apps. However, what I use is an app called Air Server. I'm using it in the trial mode, and that's why you see on the bottom right of the screen, trial. This is a $20 app. I didn't buy it yet, but I plan to because it's really helpful for me. Because now my iPad is connected remotely without any wires to my computer. I can take this and walk around in the room and do whatever, right? I don't have to be sitting right in front of my computer. I'm not connected. And so see now, you see me zooming in, right? So if I go back to the to this, you see me zooming in and you see me zooming out. Good Notes also has a presentation feature where now I'm zooming in, but you don't see that. So I'm zooming in and I can write very tiny, right? And neat. You can't see that word. You probably see that word tiny, but it's really, really small. You don't see me zooming in. You don't see me zooming out. And you kind of need that when you're working on an iPad because your writing is not as good as on paper. And so you may have to zoom in so that you can write better handwriting, but you may not want the students to see that you're zooming in or zooming out. It's a great application.
Thank you, Ahmad.
And students use either GoodNotes or Notability, but yeah, no problem.
So I just have a question. So Ahmad, when you add all this, let's say that you wanted to add 2 hours of extra over the course of a semester, little videos that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Does that change the credit hours for the course?
That's a great question, Steve, because I think it does. And I've been running only one sync session for physiology for the most part, and I was resistant to that problem. But I just noticed my course is a 3-credit course for physiology. I noticed though at the end that students need more. Students have keep on telling me in reviews that one sync session was not enough. And so last quarter, I decided, I'm going to forget about this whole credit thing, and I'm going to do a second review session. This quarter, my review session is optional. So I tell students that the review sync session is optional. However, it's recorded, so you don't have to attend live, but it's going to be there for you. And I have even though it's optional, I consistently had over 60 students attend both of my review sessions so far.
I'm sure of that. And I guess all I was trying to consider is what's the sweet spot where we feel comfortable giving extra work, and where's this point where we shouldn't go over because agents is a great example. I can see all kinds of applications where I would want to have a lot of video sidebar information, everything from certain equipment, how you use it, to a number of other things. But my concern was, even if you put it in 15-minute snippets, it's very easy to use up a lot of time. And then where does the line get drawn and when we're adding too much work that's in the asynchronous session? So that was the question I had.
Yeah, I think that's the curriculum committee should.
So credit load is 15 hours of direct contact for every credit, and then students are expected to be working outside of class, so non-contact hours, 3 hours for every credit. So there's a lot of wiggle room there.
Okay.
Well, but in our quarter
And
program,